This is actually an edited version of. I had a lot to say. I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I didn't really know how to put it on paper. And I didn't know how much I could say or how little I should say. So what I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read.
Alright, you had the right to remain silent. Anything you say and can will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have them present with you while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before any questionings if you wish. Alright. You good, dude?
Hello! Thanks to our very own Allegedly Speculating, I have come across a gem that I would like to share. I have the inmate behavior notes of Sarah Boone, and then I would like to include the sentencing speech that Sarah gave that you saw at the very beginning of this video, where she has decided to tell us how much she has forgiven Jorge Torres for having got inside of the suitcase and died in her presence. Let's start first with the notes. I'd rather start there. Okay, these were provided, like I said, to us by our very own Allegedly Speculating. I will drop all of her information down in the description box, as well as share her channel information throughout. Okay, very first, inmate behavior notes. Let me turn down this music just a little tiny bit so that it doesn't interrupt the mood. Let's change it. How about this? Oh, yeah, that's dramatic enough. Okay. We're going to go all the way back. We're all the way back on 7/25/18. All the way back. I'm going to zoom it in here and make sure everybody can see what we're going through here. Let's hide that for this session. Let's move that for now. Okay, so this came from the Orange County Corrections Department, and it's already starting out on 7/25/2018. And this is the inmate behavior notes for one Sarah Boone, or AKA Sarah Paulson. Now that we know that the Boone name will be removed from her at some point here directly. All right. Victim is currently in OCCD custody. That was 7/25/2018. Due to time restraints, unable to complete PREA interview today, will attempt at a later time. A face-to-face interview was conducted with the inmate. The inmate was advised of his custody level and given his new ID card. The risk assessment questionnaire concerns with the inmate. The form will be provided for review, then scanned into IMS for future reference. Gang member affiliation? No. Family members and or known enemies in OCCD? No. Information on 226 reviewed. Staff requested protective custody due to high media coverage. Custody remains HMD. Inmate currently housed in single cell with alert for pending PC and psych OBS. That was on 2/27/2020. Please release the mental health detainer. It's a medical note that came out on January 2nd of 2020. Inmate Boone was approved for PC status with a follow-up 30-day review per Major Martin. Memo has been signed and scanned into IMS. Alert has been updated. Confinement order will be submitted for update. Inmate Affairs Note 3/6/2020. A com- Whoop. Whoa. Calm down here. Approved protective custody. This came from a confinement status review note on 3/20/2020. Approved protective custody. Weekly review conducted. There's no change in status at this time, and the inmate has access to programs and services as documented in OCCD Administrative Order. Protective custody, segregation, confinement. Razors issued, inspected, and returned intact. 3/30/2020. Inmate allowed recreation, 30 minutes per Corporal Daniel. 3/30/2020. Let's go here. Oh, there we go. 4202. Looks like we're going to go to the next page. There we go. Inmate was issued a property bag and informed that all items, when not in use, are to be placed in the property bag. Inmate was found to have 7 plastic bags in her possession. All items were taken, and inmate was counseled about her behavior. Note made for informational purposes. So she was issued a property bag and she was informed that all items, when not in use, are to be placed in the property bag. She was found to have 7 plastic bags in her possession. For 2/2020, inmate commissary checked against receipt and revealed 2 thermals, 10 cups, and 1 pack of Oreo cookies missing. Dun dun dun. Inmate commissary checked. She served all this mess back in 4/2 of 2020. Anyway, inmate commissary checked against the receipt and reveals 2 thermals, 10 cups, and 1 pack of Oreo cookies are missing. Confinement status review note for 3/2020. Approved protective custody. They do a weekly review to decide whether or not she needs to stay in that type of confinement or not, whether she needs to be in protective custody or not. So you'll see that throughout the whole thing. Weekly review conducted. There's no change in status at this time, and the inmate has access to programs and services as documented in OCCD Administrative Order, Protective Custody, Segregation, and Confinement. 4/8/2020, negative officer contact. On 4/2 of 2020, inmate Boone, Sarah, number 20005623, was issued a property bag and was informed that all her property was to be stored in that bag when not in uses. On 4/8/2020, while conducting cell inspection at 0706 hours of L dorm, several of inmate Boone's items from her property were located on the desk in her cell. I reiterated my instructions from 4/02/2020 with inmate Boone, who became argumentative. Inmate Boone was given the same instructions in reference to her property from Corporal Daniels, who was present at the time. Later, at approximately 11:04 hours, while conducting lunch in L dorm, inmate Boone's personal items were still located on her desk. I informed Boone that if she could not store her property as instructed, it would be inventoried and placed in her inmate property. Negative earned. Shady, shady. Information on 4/8 of 2020 at 11:53 a.m. Now that happened at 11:30 and 11:53 a.m. On 4/8/2020, while collecting lunch trays, I observed that inmate Boone had not started to eat. I informed Boone that all inmates are given 20 minutes to eat. Inmate Boone became argumentative and stated, "I almost choked the other day while eating." I informed inmate Boone that was understandable, but she had not even started to eat. Inmate Boone continued to be argumentative and stated, "It's something different every day." I informed inmate Boone that these are Orange County rules and that they may vary and change at times, but she would be in compliance. 4/13/2020, Razor issued, inspected, and returned all intact. Oh goodness. 4/14 of 2020. Here we are. We're down here. Move it up a little bit. If I do it, it's just going to go to that next page, so I don't want to do that. Okay, here we go. On April 13th, inmate Boone was allotted her 1 hour out of cell time. She spent the majority of her time on the phone, then decided to take a shower. She went over her time limit by a short amount of time. Tonight, inmate Boone was on the phone, and I advised her that she had 30 minutes left. I again advised her when she had 20 minutes left. Once inmate Boone decided to finish her phone call, she had about 5 minutes left and still wanted to shower. I explained to her that she had 5 minutes to shower and that she will not be going over her time again tonight due to her using the majority of her time on the phone. Inmate Boone became argumentative, and it was again explained to her that she has 1 hour of out of cell time to shower, make phone calls, and utilize the day room. Due to her spending her remaining time arguing, inmate Boone did not shower. Inmate Boone is not receptive to counseling and acts as if L Dorm's schedule revolves around her schedule. Negative earned. Confinement status review notes from 4/15/2020. Approved protective custody. Weekly review conducted. Status review memo submitted. Inmate has access to programs and services as documented. Inmate Affairs Note, 4/20/2020. Inmate Boone approved for relocation to general population. FDC classification noted of housing change. CPC memo signed by Major Martin scanned into IMS documents. Dun dun dun. 4/22/2020. Negative officer contact. Talking in bunk area during lockdown. Please shut your mouth. Hush. Hush when you are told to hush. Information on 4/28/2020. Razor issued after lockdown. Razor returned intact. Negative officer contact on 5/1/2020. Inmate Boone has been told on several occasions that she is only to utilize one locker. On today, again, it was found that inmate Boone again had 2 lockers. I advised her the next time that the locker that is not assigned to her is full, the items in it will be put into the garbage, as I am thinking that someone left the items who was released. Oh, having a coughing fit. Sarah Boone makes me cough. So basically, she was told on several occasions to keep it down to one locker because that's all they're allowed to have. The lady told her that if she had it full again, she was just going to throw those items away, thinking that someone else had left the items who was released and not her. Okay, we're going to take a slight detour, only to go over a little bit of her forgiveness for George speech, and then we'll go right back to it.
So what I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, this is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
You may proceed, ma'am.
Kentu Sukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is a part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintu Sukuroi.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. So the first 2 minutes and 25 seconds of her brilliant narrative has been spewed, and we shall keep addressing that at a later date. Let's go on through the rest of some of her behaviors here. We were where she was going to get her things put in the garbage if she didn't pay attention to what the officer said about keeping the stuff in one locker. Okay. Negative officer contact on 5/3 of 2020. On 5/1/2020, a shakedown was conducted in Dorm H. While conducting the shakedown, it was found that several inmates in the dorm were occupying 2 lockers to store their property. I explained to each inmate individually as to why it was important to not utilize 2 lockers. For example, lockers with no inmates will be considered community property or left property from the prior inmate who was housed in the bunk, and that will be thrown away in the garbage. Today, upon doing a visual, so that happened on 5/1, and this is 5/3. Excuse me. Today, upon doing a visual of the dorm and observing inmate lockers, it was observed that bunk number 9 had property in it with no person occupying the bunk. When completing my visual, I returned to number 9 and removed the items in the locker, which consisted of a pair of orange shorts, Pepto Bismol, and a pair of socks. Immediately, inmate Boone confronted me. It said comforted me, but confronted me and stated to me that the items in the locker belonged to her. I asked her how can that be, because her and I had just had a conversation about not having 2 lockers. Inmate Boone stated to me that she was utilizing the locker because she was getting ready to get in the shower. Showers were closed at this time. Inmate Boone, for some reason, believes that the dorm rules or any rules in that matter, for any rules for that matter, do not apply to her. Inmate Boone approached the officer's desk and stated to this officer, "Why is it that you are always picking on me?" I stated to her, "I don't pick on inmates, but I do expect for inmates to follow the dorm rules, and when they don't, it will be addressed." Inmate was not receptive. This is when she proceeded to ask for an inmate request or grievance and to speak with the supervisor because she did not like what I was saying, and to her because she she did not like what I was saying to her because she is different. For example, in height, race, religion. I don't know because I did not elaborate. So she didn't. She had already been warned 2 days before that. So the lady gets ready to throw away her Pepto Bismol and her socks. Sarah Boone finds it completely inappropriate that they're going to throw her things away, even though you were warned, and that she's being picked on because she is shorter, she's Caucasian, and she has turned to religion while in jail. Okay. Okay, Sarah. 5/3/2020, negative officer contact. This is an addendum to the last negative that inmate Boone received by this officer. This inmate stated to this officer that I don't like her because she is different. Isn't sure what she meant by that statement. Information on 5/12/2020, almost a week and a half later, inmate issued breakfast tray and refused. Well, okay. Does that take us down to page 4? Whoops. Page 4. Okay, we're down on 5/12/2020. Officer contact note. Mr. Douglas arrived at H dorm to see 2 inmates in the dorm. At the completion of the second inmate, inmate Boone approached the door and asked to speak with Mr. Douglas. I asked her what was her question, and she stated that she was missing some items out of her commissary 2 weeks ago. Sorry, I'm trying not to cough in the mic. I explained to her that Mr. Douglas was not here to see her. Inmate Boone became irate and stormed to her bunk. After Mr. Douglas left, I called Inmate Boone to the officer's desk and I asked her again what was her question. She explained to me that 2 weeks ago Mr. Douglas brought commissary to her and she had several missing items, 2 Snickers and 1 bag of chips. I called K dorm and summoned Mr. Douglas to return to H dorm, in which he replied, no. I in turn asked for a short break from Officer Fulton and met Mr. Douglas at the main hallway. I began to tell Mr. Douglas what was going on, and he explained to me that he was not aware of any missing items from Inmate Boone's commissary on 2 weeks ago. He said, okay, and returned to H dorm. I again spoke with Inmate Boone and stated to her what Mr. Douglas had told me, and she said, had I let her speak with him the first time, he would have remembered her face. Inmate Boone had a signed Aramark order form in her possession stating that she received all the items. Information, 5/13/2020, razor issued, inspected, and returned. Inmate refused a breakfast tray on 5/13/2020. Negative officer contact on 5/13/2020, which is the next day from this episode. All inmates were given the dorm rules and expectations for the shower area. Inmate failed to follow the instructions given and is therefore receiving this negative. 5/19/2020, inmate refused breakfast. 5/21, Inmate Boone is receiving a negative for constantly talking in the bunk area and passing food around to all the other inmates around her. 5/24, inmate refused breakfast tray. 5/26, razor issued at lockdown, returned intact. 5/26, refused breakfast tray. 5/26, 8:33 p.m., negative officer contact. Here we go. Inmate is receiving this negative for talking in the bunk area. All inmates were advised of the dorm rules and that non-compliance would result in a negative. Negative earned. 5/29, inmate refused breakfast tray. 6/3, inmate received a razor at lockdown, razor returned intact. 6/4, negative officer contact. Inmate continued to talk in the bunk area. Oh, this girl. 6/5/2020, inmate refused breakfast tray. 6/7/2020, inmate refused breakfast tray. Okay, we're down here on 6/8/2020. All the inmates were informed of the dorm expectations. Inmate Boone constantly challenges this officer's directives. Inmate has been advised on several occasions that she is to have her ID on her person at all times when not on her bunk. Upon doing my 8:45 hours visual inspection while arriving at bunk 44, which houses Inmate Boone, her identification card was visually posted on the bunk with no body. Inmate Boone was downstairs in the day room with no ID. Inmate again was advised as to the importance of having her ID on her person. Inmate stated to me, where is it in the handbook that you have to have your ID on your person, and where does it state that you get a negative for not doing so? I pulled my printed handbook from the desk and highlighted the information regarding inmate identification and called Inmate Boone to the desk to read the information in part that is stated on page 17. All inmates are required to wear their ID at all times and display their ID card upon the request of staff. Inmate again was not receptive. All right, let's go over here and see a little bit more of Sarah Boone's apology for offing her boyfriend.
In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by Jorge Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se. Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable. Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived through to be so gold, but an act of grace, humility, and considerable self-compassion to be set free from sorrow. Withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance and adds even greater grief and deeper heartache, irreparable cracks on top of the already that no one deserves, no matter the pain or disappointment, untruths or injustice. It doesn't matter. As the more broken you are, even though now different than before, you've become more outstanding and more extraordinary.
Isn't that a bright wisdom? The bottom here it says, Boone, God is my artisan.
Above all, when you let go of blame, misunderstandings, excuses, give up your anger and cease from resentment, this is forgiven. And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward.
Girl. All of this is being said when you were charged with his unaliving. Okay. And so who are you asking? You're asking for somebody to forgive you, or are you asking to be forgiven? Which is it?
My goal begins with Jorge Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit.
Girl, you did not look over at the family right as you said that. Let's take this back just a little tiny bit, and let's see if she makes a snarky little face at the family before she starts with her little rant. Ooh, girl.
And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with Jorge Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, raped, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive Jorge for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over, for breaking or removing the locks from all of the doors and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me bloody on his bed.
Wow. She's a true gem. True gem right there. Shall we continue? (5/29/2020). Oops. Am I here? I'm here somewhere. I think that's okay. That's just fine. Everybody will be able to read that. 5/29/2020. Inmate refused breakfast tray. 6/3. Inmate received a razor. I'm sorry. Wait. I think we've already gone through this. Oh, yes. Stated on page 17, she was required to wear her ID. 6/9, inmate refused breakfast tray. 6/10, inmate refused breakfast tray. 6/13, refused breakfast tray. She just really doesn't like breakfast, does she? She's not a morning person. 6/15/2020. On 6/15/2020, while at the officer station, inmate Boone, Sarah, was observed arguing with the dorm trustee McConnell. Chastity, it's another inmate. I gave inmate Boone a verbal order to approach the officer's station. Inmate Boone was questioned as to the issue she was having with the dorm trustee. Inmate Boone stated she did not get to wash her whites. I informed Boone that I called several times at approximately 11:47 hours for laundry, and that I observed the trustee call all inmate on the recreation yard for laundry. Inmate Boone became very argumentative and stated she didn't hear the laundry called. and that she doesn't know why I had McConnell washing whites. I informed inmate Boone that she didn't need to know and that she was afforded the opportunity to wash her whites. She had another negative earned. Good thing these aren't like credits in college. She'd already be close to graduation. 617, refused breakfast tray. 618, refused breakfast tray. 619, refused breakfast tray. 620, refused breakfast tray. 622, negative officer contact. Inmate Boone is receiving a negative for constantly talking in the bunk area after being told several times there should be no talking while in the bunk area. Negative earned. 626, inmate refused breakfast tray. 627, inmate refused breakfast tray. Information. There we go. 627, 2020, negative officer contact. Inmate was observed talking in the restroom area. Inmates were told during my dorm expectations and rules that there is to be no talking in the shower area, bunk area, or restroom area. Negative earned. 627, 2020. That's at 4:43 p.m. That first one happened at 11:30 a.m. This is at 4:43 p.m. Negative officer contact. Inmate is receiving this negative for talking in the bunk area. All inmates were advised of the dorm rules and that non-compliance would result in a negative. Inmate is aware that if her negative behavior continues, she will be given informal discipline. We're only on page 6 of 84. This girl, it should say inmates behavioral issues. 628 of 2020, refused breakfast tray. 629, refused breakfast tray. 74, refused breakfast tray. 76, refused breakfast tray. 78 at 11:17 a.m., negative officer contact. Inmate is receiving this negative for being in an unauthorized bunk area. All inmates were advised of the dorm rules and that non-compliance would result in a negative. Inmate is aware that if her negative behavior continues, she will be given informal discipline. Sounds like she cares. 7-9, refused breakfast. 7-10, refused breakfast. 7-11, refused breakfast. 7-11, issued new face mask. This is 2020, so we were going through 6 foot away contact, face masks, etc. 7-12, refused breakfast. 7-13, refused breakfast. 7-14, refused breakfast tray. Okay, we're on page 7 now. Information. 7:15, refused breakfast tray. 7:20, 11:14 p.m., negative officer contact. A negative is being issued to inmate Boone for talking in the bunk area with another inmate during phase 2 ID head count. Negative earned. 7:21, information, refused breakfast tray. 7:26, refused breakfast tray. 7:28, received razor returned with blade and plastic cover intact. 7:28, refused breakfast tray. 7:30, refused breakfast tray. 7:31, refused breakfast tray. She just really doesn't like breakfast all that much, does she? 8-2, old face mask returned and inspected, issued a new face mask. 8-2, inmate refused breakfast tray. Okay, on to page 8. 8-3, inmate refused breakfast tray. 8-3, 2020, negative officer contact. A negative is being issued to inmate Boone for talking in the bunk area after dorm's expectations were given. Negative earned. 8-4, refused breakfast. Refused breakfast, not refused. 8-8, refused breakfast. 8-8, I sent inmate Boone's items to property per her request with movement, Officer Young. 4 books. 8-10, negative officer contact. Inmate Sarah Boone is receiving this negative for talking in the bunk area to another inmate. All inmates were advised numerous times that there is to be no talking while in their bunks. Second offense will result in informal discipline. 8-11, refused breakfast. 8-12, razor returned intact. 8:12, refused breakfast. 8:15, refused breakfast. 8:16, refused breakfast. 8:17, refused breakfast. 8:18, refused breakfast. 8:19, refused her lunch tray. Well, there's a change. Now she doesn't want to eat breakfast or lunch. 8:20, at 12:25 a.m., negative officer impact. At approximately 0000 hours after lockdown, inmate Boone and inmate Mitchell started a verbal argument from their individual bunks. Both inmates cursed each other back and forth. I advised them to be quiet, and neither inmate complied with my verbal commands. Both Boone and Mitchell were sent to holding for informal discipline for 2 hours. Negative earned. That was at 12:25 in the morning. Y'all should have been sleeping. 8:20 at 2:46 a.m. Upon arrival from the holding cell, I spoke with inmate Boone about her behavior, arguing during count. Inmate Boone seemed to be receptive while being spoken to, but then mentioned that she felt uncomfortable with inmate Mitchell. I asked her if anything inappropriate was done to her, to which she stated, "No, nothing ever happened." Inmate Boone mentioned that she just felt uncomfortable with the way that inmate Mitchell supposedly treated her. I asked inmate Boone if she was in fear of her life. Inmate Boone stated, "No, I'm not in fear." I then asked inmate Boone if she wanted to move back to another bunk area to avoid any other verbal disagreements with inmate Mitchell. Inmate Boone declined to be moved. At that point, inmate Boone refused all options that were given to her. This is for informational purposes. 8:20, refused breakfast. 8:21, inmate Boone sent personal items to property. Lamar took it from the property room, 3 books. 8:23, issued new face mask. 8:24, negative officer contact at 10:02 p.m. Inmate Boone is receiving this negative for talking in the day room while the nurse was in the dorm conducting medication pass. I gave several loud directives to the dorm that there would be no talking while the nurse was present. Inmate Boone was sent to her bunk at 21:54 hours for no more than 2 hours of informal discipline. Negative earned. Real winner. Real winner. Let's see what's going on with her forgiveness speech.
For terrorizing and threatening my blind and deaf dogs by leaving the gate open I built to keep them safe, telling me he hoped I'd find their bloated dead body in the pond or scrape the remains off of the pavement, for kicking them off of the bed and throwing across the room because they were trying to protect me. For threatening to make me unrecognizable to my son by breaking all of the bones in my face, like his brother Moses did to him after he kept seeing all of the bruises from George beating me, like all of the times their father beat their mother. For all of the drunken rages and fist fights with so many neighbors when wandering into their apartments during hunting expeditions after I had escaped. For drowning me in liquor and wine because I didn't want to drink, causing me to urinate on myself, then butting the end of the bottle in my face, giving me 2 black eyes and a bloody nose. For making me experience what it is to be sodomized. Threatening to kill my friends and the neighbors when they checked on me to make sure I was alive and in one piece. For threatening to burn down our townhome and set my car on fire because I got a job. For holding me hostage on weekends my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table as a warning not to ask anything or try to leave.
She doesn't sound like she's very forgiving. It sounds like she's just making a list of more excuses on why she put this man in a suitcase and let him suffocate until he passed away for 11 hours plus.
For stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested. For destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called. For me experiencing ever being arrested and after today, prison. For beating me almost blind, crushing my occipital lobe. For having me experience what it means to see stars, like in the cartoons, where a character has a tall lump on their head. I had that too, and many times. For dragging me downstairs by my hair in the middle of the night just to sit next to him. For taking my car driving drunk with my debit card to buy more alcohol while I slept, even after I kindly explained the importance of my car to take my son to school foremost, me to work, and he to his batterers intervention classes and probation officer meetings, where I would be forced to sit for hours in the parking lot waiting for him.
Oh, this girl was a mess. Complete and utter disgusting mess. We're going to go a little further into this, and then I'm going to go for a part 2. It may end up being 3 or 4 parts. We'll see. Let's go ahead and go a little bit further, though. Okay, let's see where we were. Verbal argument, declined to be moved, refused breakfast, personal items 3 books, new face mask, talking in the dorm 8:24, 10:02 p.m. Still talking. 2 hours of formal discipline. Okay, here we are. Moving to page 11. 8:25/2020, refused breakfast. 8:25/2020 at 4:01 p.m. On 8:25/2020, inmate Boone, Sarah, approached the officer station in H dorm and asked if she could go in H dorm classroom and use the colored pencils. I told inmate Boone no and informed her that the faith-based classroom and items relating to faith-based were for faith-based purposes only, not for her personal use. 8:28, refused breakfast. 8:29, received a new mask. 8:30, positive officer contact at 12:15 p.m. Inmate was not scheduled to clean up in dorm. Inmate volunteered to assist with cleaning where needed. Due to the inmate's hard work and help with maintaining cleanliness in the dorm, the inmate is receiving this positive. Well, claps all around. Clap, clap, clap. 8:31, refused breakfast. 9:01, refused breakfast. 9:04, razor issued and returned intact. 9:09, inmate verbally refused breakfast tray. 9:11, razor returned intact. 9:11, old mask discarded, new mask given. We're on to page 12. Inmate refused breakfast on 9:16 and 9:17 and 9:18. On 9:24, inmate out to recreation at 08:17 hours. 9:24, reassessment. Inmate Boone, jail number, booking date 2/25 of 2020, cell location F dorm H, custody. Did you see and understand the PREA video? Yes. Do you know how to report any new issues or concerns regarding your safety? Yes. Is there anything you wish to discuss with me regarding zero tolerance for abuse or harassment of a sexual nature? No. Do you feel safe? Yes. Oh, how are you adjusting while in custody? No issues. Additional comments? None. 9:26, 5:39 a.m. refused breakfast. 9:27 refused breakfast. 9:28, 1:35 a.m. negative officer contact. Inmate is receiving this negative for talking in the bunk area. All inmates were advised of the dorm rules and that noncompliance would result in a negative. Negative earned. 9:28, razor returned intact. Okay. Off to page 13 we go. Let's skip some of this. Masks. Oh, inmate was issued a new face mask. Refused breakfast. New mask. Refused breakfast entry generated for informational purposes only. We're on into October of 2020. 10/4 of 2020 at 5:54 a.m. Negative officer contact. Inmate is receiving a negative for excessive talking in the bunk area after being told several times there should be no talking after lockdown. My goodness, girl, you've been here since February. Do you not know the rules? No breakfast, no breakfast, no breakfast. Positive officer contact on 10/9/2020. Positive issued to inmate Boone for volunteering to clean. She volunteered without even having to ask her. One more positive, one more clappity clappity positive. Okay. New mask, refused breakfast. Oh, couldn't last, could it? 10/11/2020. Negative officer impact at 1:11 p.m. onto page 14. Inmate Boone, Sarah, is receiving this negative for refusing to follow verbal orders from staff. All inmates were advised of dorm rules and that non-compliance would result in a negative. Inmate Boone, received a formal discipline in the form of 2 hours in the holding cell. Any further violations may result in further disciplinary actions. There was a negative earned. 1014, 905. Now, what time was that? Negative officer impact on 1011 at 1:11 p.m. And then the next negative was on 1014 at 9:05 a.m. Negative officer contact. Inmate Boone was advised showers only were open. Inmate Boone continued to ask questions. When would the rec yard be open? She was given the directive to return back to her bunk. Inmate was counseled about her insolence towards staff. Negative earned. 1014, change of masks, refused breakfast. Okay, 1015, 2020, information. Inmate was observed not wearing her mask properly. After being told several times to wear it the correct way, she was placed on the bed for 2 hours. Girl. 1015, razor issued, returned intact. 1019, refused breakfast. 1019, 8:59 a.m. Inmate is receiving this negative for not having her face mask on above her nose after all inmates were advised to do so. All inmates were advised of the dorm rules and that noncompliance would result in a negative. That's on 1019 at 9 a.m. 1019 at 1017 a.m. On to page 15. Item inmate is receiving the negative for not having her mask on above her nose after all inmates were advised to do so. All inmates were advised of the dorm rules and that noncompliance would result in a negative. This girl. 1026. Inmate Boone refused her regular tray and stated to me that she wanted a bag meal. No bag meal given. Please note this inmate was on a special diet and stated to medical that she no longer wants to be on a special diet. 1027. Inmate Boone approached the officer's desk on this AM and asked me about a visit that she is to have tonight at 1900 hours. I explained to her that I did not know and that night shift checks and prints visitation assignments for the day. Inmate Boone continued to question me about her visit and asked me in a demanding tone to call visitation. I stated to her I will not. 11.2. Negative officer contact. Inmate received negative after being told consistently there is no talking in bunk area. Sarah, shut your mouth. All you do is yap. 11.9. 2020. Inmate stated to me that she did not want the food tray that has her name on it, special diet, but she desires to have a bag meal. I explained to her that she has a special tray for whatever reason between her and whoever put that note in. I also explained to her that if she was having problems with her diet tray, that she needed to get with medical and get it changed. Please note that this inmate was also on another special diet and she put in a request to medical to have it canceled. 11:12, 5:55 a.m. Refused breakfast tray. Okay, so I think we're going to stop right there on page 15. We'll pick up on page 16 when we get back. In the meantime, I really, really appreciate everybody hanging out with me. We're going to go for a part 2 shortly. In the comments, let me know what you think so far about the way that this inmate has been behaving and the special forgiveness note that she is in the middle of reading for George. See you soon. Thanks for hanging out with Hio.